Oh, Jehovah, honey. Oh, Jehovah, honey, boo. This is Sister Billy Buzzer May Smith, honey. And I'm in the back of the King Hall, and I just found some gossip, honey. I found out the Brighter Light podcast is back, boo. I thought we had stamped them out, boo. I thought we had prayed them away, boo. I prayed so hard to Jehovah, honey, and now they're back, honey. Another group of apostates messing up Jehovah's organization, honey, lying on us, boo.
Hold on, time is wasting. So joy to your bright light. No more hesitating. So joy to your bright light.
Down the road, my life is gone. Is this where I belong? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? My mental state is fucking me up, and I cried upon while asking you for some answers, but we don't have that type of bond. Now my desire's gone, and with the way that I've been living lately, if I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this bullshit, niggas call me a sellout, cause I hopped in Christianity so strongly, then I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a scared dog with his tail down, feeling so damn humiliated cause they looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I'll just expose the truth. I'm so close to the fucking edge, I should be close to you, but who the fuck are you? You never show the proof, and I'm only fucking human, yo, what am I supposed to do? There's way too many different religions with vivid descriptions, begging all fucking men and women to listen. I can't even beat my dick without getting convicted. These ain't wicked decisions, I got different intentions. I've been itching to get it, I've been giving assistance, but the whole fucking system is twisted. Now I'm dealing with this backlash because Marcus isn't a Christian, and I've been told that my sinful life is an addiction, but I can't buy it. It's just too hard to stand beside it. I need an answer, humans can't provide it. I look at the earth, the sun, and I can tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing, I can't deny it. Is heaven real? Is it fake? Is it really how I fantasize it? Where's the Holy Ghost at? How long does it take a man to find it? My mind's a non-stop tape playing and I can't rewind it. You gave me the Bible and expect me not to analyze it? I'm frustrated and you provoked it. I'm not reading that motherfucking book because a human wrote it. I have a fucking brain, you should know it. You gave it to me to think, to avoid every useless moment. It was a mission that I had to abort, cause humans be lying with such an inaccurate source. It's gonna be hard to put me back on the course. Next Jehovah's Witness to come on my porch, I swear I'm slamming the door. A lot of folks believe it though, but I'm not surprised. Humans are fucking dumb, still thinking that Pac's alive. I ain't trying to take your legacy and torture down. I'm just saying, I ain't heard shit from the horse's mouth. Just sheep always telling stories of older guys who were notarized by you and you finally vocalized. Now I'm supposed to bow my head and close my eyes and somehow let the Holy Ghost arise? Sounds like a fucking poltergeist. Show yourself and the boom is done. Every rumor's gone, I no longer doubt the shit, you're the one. I'll admit that my sinful ways were stupid fun, and all my old habits can hop on top of a roof to plunge. I donate to a charity that could use the funds. Fuck the club instead of bitches, I'd hang with a group of nuns. And everyone I ran into would know what I came to do. I wouldn't take a step unless it was in the name of you. I hate the fact that I have to believe you haven't been chatting with me like you did Adam and Eve. And I ain't seen no fucking talking snake unravel from trees with an apple to eat. That shit never happens to me. I don't know if you do or don't exist. It's driving me crazy, send your condolences. This is me reaching to you, so don't forget, if hell is truly a pit of fire and I get thrown in it, I'ma probably regret the fact that I ever wrote this shit. My gut feeling says it's all fake. I hate to say it, but fuck it, shit, I done lost faith. This isn't a small phase, my perspective's all changed. My thoughts just keep picking shit apart all day. And in my mind, I make perfect sense. If you aren't real, then all my prayers aren't worth a cent. That will mean that I can just make up what my purpose is, and I can sit in church and just say fuck in the services. Man, what if Jesus was a facade? Then that would mean the government's God. I feel like they've been brainwashing us with a lot, so much that we don't even notice that we're stuck in the box. Man, everything is what if. Why is it always what if? Planet Earth, what if? The universe, what if? My sacrifice, what if? My afterlife, what if? Every fucking thing that deals with you is fucking suspect. I'm fucking done. I'm fucking done. This is my fucking life and I'm living it. I'm having fun. If you really care for me, prove that I need to live carefully. But I'll be damned if I put my own pleasure aside for an afterlife that isn't even guaranteed. We are you, and you're us. Stop playing games. My life's all I got, and heaven is all in my brain. And when I feel I'm in hell, my ideas are what get me through pain. Do as you please, and I'll just do me. I'm a human, I'll stay in my lane. Ill mind. It's us, mind, power. Live life, mind, power.
Brighter Light Podcast, this is episode 20. This is Anthos, and I have a couple of guests sitting in here with me. Robert McCoy, you saying your first and last name?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Angela Ola,
Yep.
right? And Robert McCoy.
Hi, good afternoon.
And I am just known as Anthos.
Perfect.
While I say your first and last names. This is the first episode in a long time that we've come back with. We kind of took a long hiatus. Kelly and I had decided to stop doing these all together at some point for personal reasons, and I just felt like I was over the JWs in any way, shape, or form, and which included obsessing over why they're frauds and having to do a podcast. But I've had a couple of friends who were fans of the show, like King of All Faders. Got to say what up to him. Bob Smith. Apostababe. But they have convinced me that we shouldn't have quit doing this.
Well,
so
now you have to
here we
continue
are.
because I just found you, so.
Right. All right. Gladly. And I'm very glad that you guys are sitting in with us today because we have a really important topic to discuss that actually came up while I was talking to you, Robert, the other day. You wanna fill them in on the conversation a little bit?
Well, I remember you and I were just having a real moment, kind of just talking about some of the realities we face where here it is, we've managed to break free from a cult, and really excited about the possibilities and what it all meant, but not being able to do it because of the job market and getting to the point where we could support the lifestyle we want. We were realizing the reality that we really would have to do some schooling. We'd have to do many of the things that were frowned upon, and how it's directly correlating to the reality of our bank accounts right now, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the worst things that a Jehovah's Witness faces when leaving is not having the regular tools in life to move forward and leave the cult behind. Angela, you got brought into this conversation because
I jump in on everything.
But you said something.
So my awareness was the Twitter conversation where somebody had made a comment about how many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses can find counseling or support through some form of therapy with counselors who would actually understand the mind control and the cult life in order to help them. And so that's always been a struggle for me personally. It's kept me from seeking out any kind of help and trying to figure it out on my own, which is why I have now kind of spun that around. I also don't have college or university education, so I worked for myself and became a life coach.
How does one become a life coach? I've always wondered.
Well, so for me, I do things a little bit differently in the sense that most people would find a reputable, like, physical school and would go and do the courses. But in my area, that's like $4,000, right? So the type of life coaching that I was doing kind of ad hoc was based off my own life experience and the things that I've learned and taught myself. And I just wanted to do a course that gave me the accreditation to claim that I was a life coach, and also a little bit of knowledge and like foundation, so I'm not actually messing up people worse. And so because that's my thing, I don't want to do any more damage that's already done. And you don't know what you don't know. So I found an online course that was significantly less, and I went and got my certification as a master life coach.
So, have you been able to use your life coaching skills, and your past with the cult to be able to help JWs?
So here's the interesting thing: is like you were saying at the beginning, how you kind of wanted to create that distance between you and the XJW stuff. So I've been in that space for quite a while, and with I got really caught up and addicted to the Scientology Leah Remini show, and it's kind of brought me back into contact with a lot of not just XJWs, but a lot of cult members that have left of organizations I've never even heard of. And so I'm really being drawn back in. When I was working with XJWs, it was all just from my own experience, and basically what I was doing was going to support groups and just listening to people and holding their hand as they worked through the distress of being shunned, basically. Yeah. So the interesting thing is the life coaching that I do currently with clients who haven't had those experiences, my XJW stuff actually really gives me a huge advantage, because everybody comes from a dysfunctional family. And dysfunction is dysfunction. So I have a greater understanding and a greater toolkit, I guess, for clients who've never been associated with any kind of mind control or cult abuse of any, or religious abuse of any kind.
I found in having this conversation with Robert that I was very surprised in having the conversation with you two on Twitter, that there isn't any groups that are geared toward after leaving, after coming to terms that it's a cult, and moving on with our lives. Very surprised to find that it's a subject that's not talked about too much.
It's only been the last year or two that I've even admitted to people that aren't, like, people who've just come into my life in the last couple of years. It's only been the last couple of years that I even tell them that I'm an XJW.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. Huh?
It is. I'm not even gonna lie. It was embarrassing when I was in.
Right. It was.
Yeah. I was a horrible JW.
In what way?
I hated going door to door. Like, abhorred it. Because I lived in a really small town. And so everybody knew me.
So you saw your friends.
And teachers, and and they already knew something was weird because I didn't do birthdays or sing the national anthem or celebrate Christmas. So there was already something bizarre about me. And by the time I hit, the grades where people are very conscious about the other kids in their room, I was already, kind of an outsider.
Right.
Uh-oh. Yeah. And then you show up at their door and they're like, "What the heck is this? Get off my property."
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like we lost Robert here.
Oh, was I talking a lot?
Let's see if he's able to join us here.
Mm-hmm. I used to always lie on my service reports. When I was in, we had to have a minimum of 2 hours a month. So I would just lie and said I did my 2 hours a month.
Oh, he just experienced a power outage.
Oh no!
Oh, damn it.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. Let me call him really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Pull back the cover. Shades. Good God, it's a raid. Cut out the lights and call the standing over there. The devil's son-in-law. Bring on the juice. Bring on the juice. Bring on the juice.
Okay.
Bring on the juice.
We've had our little technical difficulties. Robert has dropped out. He'll be back in just a moment here. So instead of having this conversation without him, I wanted to touch on a little discussion that we've tossed around on Twitter a little bit. These goddamn earthquakes and floods that is probably scaring the hell out of people who are almost out of the cults.
Right. And keeping the ones in who were on the fringe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm trying to, really trying to ignore it and not make it my own problem because it is not my problem.
Right.
They have ways to still escape, but god damn it, the timing.
Yeah.
Because I've been hearing that there have been so many people that have been leaving, that the Kingdom halls are damn near empty these days.
Well, and the interesting thing is too, like I've been out for a very, very long time. So I've really kind of I got to a point where it's like, I'm just gonna live my life and not be consumed with all of that. I was satisfied with the level of, for lack of a better word, healing, and kind of got my head straight. But I just saw yesterday that they're selling headquarters in New York.
Oh yeah, that was
I was like, oh, that's interesting. They must need money.
They've done that. That was how new was that article?
Well, I don't know, but apparently they're supposed to be out in October or November of this year, no?
I don't know. I first heard about it almost 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's old news. I don't know.
They're
You know
making a
how
lot
the
of money
old
off
news
this.
goes.
Right.
It's old, and we have new light now.
Right. They're making millions.
Oh.
I think
So,
like close to, I think over $1 billion actually. I think.
In Canada, their bank accounts are in the billions. In Canada, there's freedom of so anybody who's a licensed religion, not licensed religion, but tax exempt and a registered religion, they have to make their tax returns public, access to the public. So when I was really heavy into doing the research, somebody had said to me, I have access to the tax return that they filed last year. So I asked them to send it to me, and they cleared $1 billion.
God damn it.
Yeah, which is really sad considering my grandmother gave her last $500 to them.
One more time, I want to give the drummer some of this
You
funky
know,
soul we got here.
it makes me angry. When Jehovah's Witnesses have to go and clean toilets because they're
Right.
not allowed to, pursue a career of any kind.
And share that money.
Right, and we used to have, there was an older couple in our Kingdom Hall that were, they invited us for lunch once after a Sunday meeting, and we're cutting mold off the bread to conserve. Yeah, and it's like people have to live like that. Meanwhile, you're sitting on $1 billion. It's crazy.
And then when what was the hurricane in Texas?
Harvey? Or was that
that-
Mexico?
no.
I don't know. I can't keep
The
this.
one that just happened.
Irma.
Irma.
Was the latest one. It didn't hit Texas. It hit Florida, though.
Wait, yeah, but what was the one in Texas that was right before that?
Maybe it was Harvey. I don't know.
Shame
I can't
on
keep them
us.
straight anymore.
Shame on us. Anyways,
It was the last one.
Right. But my point in bringing that up is all this money that the witnesses have,
Right.
and they didn't take care of their people.
Well, they did. It's how many organizations? I mean, Canada alone sent teams and medics, and not just to Texas, but to the Caribbean when Irma hit, and Mexico, and all of that stuff. And it's like, that's just a country who's not invested in these people at all. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, how many of them even bothered to check in on their, and in quotations, brothers and sisters?
Right. I hear they didn't open the Kingdom Halls for the displaced brothers and sisters.
And who got roasted for not opening his church in Texas?
Yep.
Joel Osteen, yeah. Roasted.
He'll be fine now.
Ah, there's Rob.
Sorry about that, guys. It's been triple-digit heat here in Dallas several days in a row.
We're chasing ya.
It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. So they do these rolling blackouts to serve.
Did they not know that we were having a podcast today?
How dare they? Ridiculous.
Do they not know who we are?
God damn them. Hey, Robert, we were talking about, while you were gone, we touched on the subject of the earthquakes and the disasters that are taking place right now. That is such horrible timing and frustrating for people like ourselves who know that there are people who are getting scared and rethinking their thoughts on cults.
Sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
I was going to say, having gone through Katrina, we are going to have to do a natural disaster podcast because I would love to share with you guys, seeing from firsthand experience, how the business crooked aspect of the insurance money the friends are going to get, and the tactfully written letters in which they so carefully get the money from those friends and then send untrained skilled laborers to fix the home you're supposed to be raising a family in.
Oh, you know what, Robert, I saw you go live on Facebook a little while ago, and so I had it on my TV, and it played the next video, and it was your next video. You were talking about that. And it was,
I need to follow Rob on Facebook.
Please do.
Yeah, he's pretty good with the live videos. How do people find you on Facebook, Robert?
I have one page that deals with just Robert McCoy. You can look at Scars, Man's Battle with Breast Cancer. It'll bring up my Facebook page. And you can also, I think if you just type in my name, Robert McCoy Jr., it should be something that you can find. But I will make sure, Angela, that I definitely get all that information over to you, because I look forward to corresponding. I really do.
Absolutely.
So back on our original subject, which was the lack of careers that come out of being a witness. Robert, in particular, your situation.
Yeah, I have an 8-month-old daughter. She's 8 months and 4 days old. Yeah, and so I know when I knew she was coming, I knew I would need to generate way more income, and that's even if she's completely healthy. It's a serious change, and so it was always on my mind, the need to try to get more and more and try to just find as many jobs so I could to try to make this happen. And it became a self-perpetuating pit of depression, basically, because I started to just really accept that college just really wasn't something that was feasible. But here it is. It's needed, because every interview I'm going on or inquiring about, at the very least, they want a 2-year certification of something like that.
Here too, like, I'm looking at the job market now, and the basic jobs, they're like, must possess a college or university degree. And I'm like, okay, but so here they don't even matter. It doesn't even matter what you took. They just want to know that you went to college or university to get a basic job. Yeah.
Basic job that has nothing to do with any degree. Right?
I definitely want to share this one here with you. This was such a surreal feeling for me, because it really looked like something I'd seen in movies. I had inquired through an XJ-Dub about potential jobs, because I really do enjoy the customer service experience. It's something that I enjoy. And so, they hook it up. I'll just fast forward. They hooked it up. I get to this interview. I sent in my resume, and the typical the way we were brainwashed to believe that for some reason, everybody all over the world just lights up with seeing Theocratic Ministry School on a resume. We were really taught to believe
They
that
do?
foolishness.
Wait a minute.
So
You have that on your resume?
Wow, I think
I kid you not, I had it on my resume. I kid you not.
really.
It's those simple ways you don't realize that brainwashing is still
Wow.
there. That
I must have slept through that meeting because
I
I
did.
didn't hear that
it
at
was
all.
in Pioneer School. In Pioneer School,
Oh, in
they would
Pioneer
often
School.
talk about that, and you referenced earlier the Leah show, and I can remember one of the episodes she talked about how basically the stuff that would be in our version of the yearbook as Jehovah's Witnesses, it was just all embellished. It's all made up. And now looking back, of course, at Pioneer School, they were just lying to us about saying, Fortune 500 owners say that they look for Jehovah's Witness affiliation in resumes. I kid you not.
What?
I kid you not.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I had no
Neither
idea.
did I. And you know what? I would have.
Crazy.
Let's
How long
see,
ago was
I
that,
was in
Rob?
Pioneer School maybe 6 years ago, because I left 3 years ago. So it was, I want to say it was 6, yeah, I think 6
You're
years ago
really-
seems about
I
right.
am too, Angela.
You are
Oh
too?
yeah,
Oh my
I've been
gosh.
out for a long time. I'm disfellowshipped, but up
Yeah.
until about 3 years ago, I still believed that it was the truth.
That's the interesting thing too, is that how long it takes you from the time you're either kicked out or you leave to actually be
Yes.
done.
Right.
Like that blows my mind. Like it took me a long time, and I've been out 30 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm old.
Yeah.
I've been out a long time.
Wow.
I read The Reluctant Apostate, and I couldn't believe the stuff that went on in the 2000s. Like that blows my mind.
What's the reluctant apostate? How do I not know? about this?
There's a gentleman, Lloyd something or other, over in the UK. He wrote a book, and it's called The Reluctant Apostate.
The
It's,
guy with the JW
Yeah.
survey guy.
yeah.
Ah.
I read that book in 2 days. And I was blown away about the stuff that happened like in the 2000s, because he's newly out also.
So you left way before all of the Anthony, you remember when they were giving us all of these alterations and stuff when we went through the Revelation book again, and it was heavily edited, and so 30 years gone. I'm glad you missed that bullshit.
Me too. Me too. I was disfellowshipped in 87, 88. Oh, wait, no. 89.
89.
88, 89, yeah.
I had not come back
I was
yet.
gone. I was gone, though. I had kind of faded away. So, they dragged me in and beat me up and disfellowshipped me.
This is one of those kind of shows, podcasts, where we ask, why were you disfellowshipped, Angela?
Oh, so here's an interesting story. Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I'm not even gonna get to all the stuff that happened as I was growing up, but basically my mom was brought in because my biological father died before I was born, about a month before I was born, and she was in southern Alberta, which is western Canada-ish, and of course the witnesses befriended her and brought her in as a JW. So
You don't want to tell us in one word why
I'm
you
getting
were
it. I'm getting there. I love stories. I just
It was
love to tell
murder.
stories.
Right.
It wasn't murder. It wasn't murder. I wish. It would imply I had some control.
Okay.
Anyway, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. My mom married somebody who was studying at the time. He turned out to be an alcoholic, and he was very abusive, mentally, physically, emotionally. So we grew up in that environment.
So you did beat the shit out of someone
Me?
or something?
No, I can't say that on a podcast. Dude, there's
no
no
proof.
witnesses.
The statutes
There's
of
no proof.
limitation
There's
in
no
Western Alberta have expired. Speak freely.
Maybe not. Anyway, fast forward, I couldn't get out of home fast enough when I graduated from high school. I moved into Edmonton, which is one of the bigger cities in Alberta. Moved into a congregation. Met, I don't even know, like, honestly, my memory is so foggy. The short story is, I was set up and was a victim of date rape. When I went to the elders, wait, it gets so much more interesting. When I went to the elders to report myself, and it's funny.
Wait, really
it's
quick.
funny because when,
You said you were set up?
yeah, He
Like there were several people
no,
conspired?
he had it all planned out.
Okay.
So
Oh,
we
okay,
were
by
supposed
the
to meet a
person.
group of
Okay.
people at the movie theater, and the people couldn't make it, and so they were just gonna meet us all at his house after the movie. We get to his house, his mom's out of town, and he locks me in the house. Drops me off the next morning, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "You don't go running to the elders," and drops me off at my house.
Gosh, I'm sorry you went through that. I am.
At the time it was really, really bad,
Ugh.
but I've made peace with all of that. I actually, I've worked many years on forgiveness, not just for him, but my
Right.
mom and a lot of people who played parts in my dysfunction. So I've done a lot of work, which is why I do the life coaching. But when I went to the elders to turn myself in, of course they're like, okay, we need to have, more than one elder. So now I have to tell them the whole story. There's 3 elders there.
And are they asking all the stupid little details that are not
I don't
necessary
even
for them to know?
remember. But what blew my mind was that somebody else had reported him also. It wasn't the first time he had
See?
done it.
See?
Oh my goodness.
But he wasn't baptized. So they couldn't punish him. So they put me on private reproof.
For that
For having the audacity of
Yeah.
being
A
raped.
victim. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but what happened is, it sent me the other way, because now I have no support. I'm already, I'm on bad terms with my family. My family was never nurturing and supportive. And so now this little group of friends that I've made at the Kingdom Hall at 18 years old, I can't talk to. And I can't communicate
because you were date raped.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So-
what was it they felt that you
I don't even
shouldn't
know.
have gone back to the house or
Honestly,
whatever?
my
Like, how did they
head,
blame you?
my head was in such a bad place. Honestly,
Right.
I was more or less just in a fog because I was still a virgin.
Oh my God.
Right. So that was my first experience ever. Was that, and he kept me there all night. Like it wasn't just he had sex and
This is
then
also
dropped.
kidnapping,
Absolutely.
basically.
And it was never reported to the police.
Thank God for the internet. And,
Oh, absolutely, 'cause we didn't
people
have
willing
that.
to speak.
I didn't have that.
Yeah, because as far as we knew, the Jehovah's Witnesses was extra spotless, and nothing like this could ever even possibly, you wouldn't even want to even consider these types of
But
things
that's
happening.
what made it so hard for me to go through, was because I had never ever known anybody who had this stuff happen to them. And really,
Right.
there's just so much, when it comes to those kinds of experiences for victims of rape, is there's half of you blames yourself and half of you is the victim. And so, you're just, it was a really bad time. I was going to attempt suicide, and believe it or not, one of those horribly satanic worldly people saved my life. So, yeah.
I'm finding out that
But that's not why I was disfellowshipped. No.
you said that's not why?
So finish what you were
Really
going to
quick,
finish, and then I'll come
really
back.
quick before. Yeah, really quick. Yeah, we do want to know this. Say
You
we,
lazy elder.
for the listeners. They're like, shut up, Anthos. Let her tell us. I'm coming to find out that these stories, I cannot believe how rampant they are. Most female XJWs that I know have
Absolutely.
some kind of story like this.
100%. Yeah.
Mind blowing.
So,
One thing I wanted to add there is, just before you continue, is that we have the exact same genesis to our story where my father was gone. He was murdered, and I was only
Oh my
10
God.
months old. My big brother was 5 years old when they got their claws into my mom, and everything, kind of went from there. But please
that gives me
continue.
goosebumps. That's horrible. So the gentleman who called me while I was in the midst of my suicide attempt, I actually started dating, and he moved out to Toronto to do road construction because at the time there was really good money in it, and I followed him out here to Toronto. And 1 year into that, he moved back, he was homesick, and I was like, I have nothing to go back for. I love living in the size of the city. Nobody knows me. I'm anonymous. Nobody cares about my story. I can just disappear. I happened to go home for a visit after that, and I found out maybe 10 years ago, my youngest sister filled me in on the whole story. but the elders had shown up at the house because my mom had called them and reported me for smoking. And so they had a judiciary committee thingamabobber and disfellowshipped me for smoking. And that's my story. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And my youngest sister's so angry because she's like, you were faded away. Because, like, had she not turned me in, they wouldn't have come and hunt me down and disfellowshipped me. Nobody even knew what was going on, and I wouldn't have lost contact with my sisters.
Isn't it
And
crazy
so that
how
makes her so angry.
they trained us to snitch each other out and snitch on ourselves?
My own mother,
It's so crazy.
who for 30 years has not talked to me.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is and it's not. Like, I miss having a mom and the concept of what that's supposed to be like, but I never really had one anyway, so it's not like I missed out.
You literally have not spoken in 30 years?
Wow. 2 years ago, I started on Mother's Day sending her Happy Mother's Day messages through Facebook.
Right.
And then this year, out of the blue, she just messaged me. She's not well. She has shingles, and so she was laying in bed. And she was like, oh, I just wanted to ask you because you said it was all or nothing. Because I have children, and so they wanted to have connection with my children. And I said, absolutely not. You don't get to shun me and then cut off my children, and then have a relationship with my children.
Not only shun you, but sneak in some little
Right.
JW doctrine on them whenever they can.
Right. So she said, well, you said it was all or nothing. And this is coming out of the blue many years later. And I was like, well,
Right.
can you put some framework around that? I can't even imagine what is it in relation to? And she was like, oh, I don't even remember. And I was like, okay, well, like, I don't know how to help you. Anyway, long story short, she had asked if we could have more communication than what we currently do. So I was like, what the heck is going on? Because I'm a normal person now. I assume you want more communication. And so I was like, maybe there's a glimmer of hope. So my mom communicates with me via Facebook, and there's a lot of stuff on my personal page I don't want my mom to see. It's not her business. How I live my life would offend her even more and turn her off. And there's a lot of things that is none of her business. Right.
Huge setback.
And if we're going to make progress, she can't have access to my Facebook. So I wanted to email her back and forth. And then, so I said, you know, maybe we could share some pictures or whatever. And I didn't get a response right away, even though Facebook showed me that she had read the message. So I was like, this is not going well. This is not going the way that I would hope it to go. And 2 days later, she said, after prayerful consideration, she feels that any additional communication would put her relationship with Jehovah at jeopardy.
Oh.
And I was like, it actually made me really angry. Like, really angry. Yeah.
Especially
because it's all a lie.
Especially being that it was her idea to take that step with you.
Right. So she's like, we should just keep it to life events, health and moving and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's what we have now. So I don't know what it is that you're doing, but I'm done playing.
Robert, it was interesting what you brought up a moment ago because I came from the same thing, a single parent household, and I know about the clause being sunken into single parent households, especially with a woman as the head of the house. I come from the same thing. So did you feel like with me, like how it was with me, where like the congregation was your father?
Well, you know, remembering I was so young, the way it played out for me was my mom remarried in '84. I was 4 years old, so this man was the only father I ever knew. It was my older brother who has, you know, I had 5 years with my dad and really knew the man, and then to lose him and have someone who was the complete opposite of my father, intellectually, physically, and then definitely in his parenting style, you know, so it was more of a joke for my brother, whereas the man that, you know, my mom married, he was my dad to me. But it, yeah, I'll pause there. Yeah.
Was he heavily into the cult as well?
Oh my gosh, was he? He very quickly advanced. And so most of my life living under that roof, he was an elder. And so that whole fishbowl of being an elder's kid in a tiny city of New Orleans, you know, where everywhere you go, it's either the territory that you work in or at the very least, the other congregations there. So there's very few places to go and hide and try to behave differently, knowing that I always had to be portraying the best example. So it was very tough because of that fishbowl. As I tell witnesses what my brother and I went through, fellow witnesses say my parents were extreme witnesses.
Wow.
So you,
Oh my
yeah, they really were
Yikes.
extreme, and it was because of that whole, you know, we don't want to bring reproach, you know, your dad's an elder, so we had to be exceptional, you know, we had to have double the national average. We had to go out and fill service during the summer at least 3 days a
Oh my
week.
God.
You know, it was one of those things. We definitely had to do that.
Brutal.
man. And so that makes a lot of sense because I do see you make a lot of posts on, well, not a lot, but every now and again I will see a confirmation of how you feel about that organization. And
I want to see it burn, and I don't mind using that word. I am very aware of its repercussions, and I just feel that life in itself is just such a wonderful gift. And to think of how many people are just wasting away inside of it, away, and as
For
the
me,
further, go ahead.
anytime I ever saw people out with their children going door to door, it would actually make me cry. To see them dragging these children from door to door, knowing what it's doing, not just to, you know, their self-esteem, but
no choice in the matter.
No choice.
to their future. Like, it literally, I used to drive by and it was all I could do not to stop and just like steal those children away.
Yes. Yep.
it's a wonder that cults are still legal. Childhood
right?
indoctrination is legal. That is, it should very much be illegal.
It definitely should be something where it's encouraged that it has to be paid, yes, past the age of reason, because if the human brain develops until the age of 24, at least that's the latest science, then at the very least a person shouldn't be able to say yes to anything at such a young age that will have lifelong repercussions.
Right.
You mentioned, Angela, that the correspondence that you had was through Facebook. Since the birth of my daughter, the relationship with my mom has been completely under my control, because I know the way it'll work, where I've done that song and dance where we will get just life updates, and then she would reach out a little bit more, and then I begin to get excited, and then she goes to one meeting, and then all of a sudden her conscience kicks back in, and I get that same message where I'm going to have to lessen my association and all of that bullshit.
Where
so
my mom and my sisters were coming to Toronto for something, and my mom wanted to meet us in the hotel lobby so that she could meet her grandchildren who she didn't know. And she told me, well, your sister won't come down because it makes her sad to meet the kids to know that they're going to die at Armageddon. And that, you know, that was the last time I ever made myself available to that, because that is,
how dare
like,
you.
that's a stab to the heart.
How dare you.
Right? Right. Yeah.
That's way too much to be putting on children, especially when it's a lie to begin with.
Right.
Who was it that I was talking with? We were joking about the pictures in the publications. I used to
I look
scare
at
the
them
hell
now
out
and
of
I'm
us.
like, how was I ever impressed by that?
I know.
All the stuff.
Yeah.
You mean like the new system pictures?
The drawings and stuff, yeah. You know, the interesting
The
thing...
shitty drawings too. Now that I'm old enough to pay attention to
right? Now that I'm out in the world and I see real artwork.
them. Right.
The
And they,
interesting
like-
thing is many years ago there was somebody who had said that, well, or maybe it was in the book, I don't know, anyway, there was something about the material is like spoon feeding babies, and that's how they treat their members with information. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I went back and tried to read some of the magazines, and I was like, oh my god, they're right.
It is.
It's drivel. Yeah.
The pictures are so funny too, with the one African man in a dashika with the head thing that they wear on the head, the hat that goes along with it, and an Asian man next to him, and then a Latino, European, like they perfectly placed these people together, like
Well, what about the story
representing
you
all the
were
nations.
subjected to at such
And they're
an
all
early age?
smiling.
I can remember a scenario where I was trying to watch an episode of He-Man in the 80s, and something with Skeletor happened on the screen, and I can remember my dad saying, you know, turn that off, that's, you know, witchcraft. And besides, we need to get ready for the Bible study anyway. So that night for the Bible reading, we just so happened to read about how David returns with like garbage bags full of foreskins just for fun when he was trying to impress Saul. And it's like, just for fun, like Saul said, bring me 20. He brought back 5,000 just for shit's sake.
Oh my
and
goodness.
this is, but you better turn He-Man off because that's, oh my gosh.
I don't remember that story.
I missed that story too.
So he went out.
Well-
So he went out.
Oh, I missed all the good stuff.
Penises of 5,000 men.
No, just what
Right.
happened
No,
was
just the foreskin.
as they were conquering, they got to a point
Because
where
we're gonna make soup.
Saul was
Foreskin
falling
soup.
out of favor with his God, and he saw that how people were singing songs about David's exploits, and so as Israel were progressing to take over other lands, Saul, apparently trying to get him in more and more dangerous situations, would give him basically, you know, points to hit. Basically, like, okay, I need 10 heads, and I need, you know, the foreskins of the army. But instead of just killing the army, he would kill all the men in return with all their foreskins.
Oh my God.
And present it to him, showing,
Wow.
you know, I want your daughter, man. This is how much of a badass I am. And so, you know, we're reading this story, and it's the stuff at such a young age. The pictures that we were told to read. Put that comic book up, but here, look at these people. This picture of these people about to drown as they look at this ark floating. Like, it's
Right,
sick.
and holding a baby too, crying.
Yes,
Holding a baby
yes.
on a little island or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest memories is
Wow.
the picture of Jezebel about to be thrown
Yes.
to the dogs.
Yes.
Oh
Yes,
yeah, I
with
forgot
the
about
fingers
that one.
all pointed and face all.
Right,
Well, it was okay though, because she was a
Yes,
harlot.
yeah.
So it was okay to
exactly.
share that
and
story.
they made her face just look so
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah, yeah.
Demonic evil person.
Guys, you know, I really take it so seriously how I am really undaunted in wanting to expose them for what they are, because up until I chose to leave, I know you hadn't asked me yet, like the one reason I was gone, but I
Tell
actually
us.
told the elders that I had no interest. Literally, 1 week I was a servant giving public talks at the assemblies, every convention giving on the stage, and a regular pioneer to the very next week gone, where it was I can
It was that
no
fast.
longer. It was that fast where
Wow.
it was a things that I just could not in short order ignore. It was just things. And my video today I posted just really, and for you, Angela, just to know the background of it, I found out that a guy in the congregation was a registered sex offender, but the congregation hadn't been told.
Oh my
But
God.
the elders were aware, and the only reason I found out was because the guy was a client of mine. I was a barber, and he disclosed to me that was the case. And this man had been in my home. He was in my field services group. I was the one assigning him. We had been in car groups where he'd be in the back seat with kids, and I'm driving to the next house. I don't know.
That makes me sick.
I was never told this stuff. And so, because I was one of those regular pioneers who would be finished with my yearly time with 4 months to go, like I was that serious about it, I'm just using that same energy to completely expose these people, because it is very, very evil on 50 levels what they do to people.
I know.
My whole thing with bringing down the organization, I was very gung-ho about it also. Everybody needed to know how destructive this organization was. I kind of sit on the fence, because there's people like my mom that without that organization, she's like, that's all
Angela,
she has.
I can't believe you just said that, because my mom, when she passed away in 2013, but during that time, when I look back at if she were still alive while I'm now someone who opposes the organization, I don't think that I would have shared any of the stuff with her.
I
think I would let her
can't do
keep
it to my mom. when she said, "Oh, I don't want it to jeopardize my relationship with Jehovah," I wanted to blast her with, just overload her with information to prove that this organization is so false.
It would probably kill her to learn the truth.
But I think that there's something a little bit off with my mom mentally because of her upbringing, because of her life experiences, and because she's been in witness her whole life.
My mom would not know how to adjust.
Right. My mom's never worked.
Adjust to not being a Jehovah's
My
Witness.
mom has never worked a day in her life.
Right.
To then pull that rug out from underneath of her, good, bad, or otherwise, I think, part of me is like, yeah, I want her to know the truth because I think it's sad that she wasted her whole life on that shit.
She would not want to know
honestly,
the truth.
I think it would put her in an institution.
Right.
And I don't want that for
That's
her
the same
either.
with my mom.
And I don't want that for any of the people who are so blind, so caught up in it all. Like, that shock. Like, when I was doing my research after I left, and I was reading Crisis of Conscience, I have never finished that book because I got to the point where he was sharing about the situation in Mexico and the situation in Africa with the political cards. I was so disgusted that I've never been able to pick that book back up.
How many people lost their lives over that?
Tons, thousands. Thousands.
Oh my God.
They were slaughtered. God. They were absolutely slaughtered in Africa. Meanwhile, in Mexico, they're paying them off, and that disgusts me to no end. But that took me.
Not only that, the United Nations.
To get over. My mom would have to deal with that. She would have to deal with knowing that pedophiles are moved from organization to organization. She would, all of that stuff. How do you deal with all of that? That's
right. Yeah, my mom wouldn't have been able to handle it.
That's the only thing that kind of.
If there was a way if I could really visualize a way in which the organization could proceed but not have the element of it being a sex offender's paradise, I would be able to wholeheartedly agree with you guys about not wanting to just take away their favorite blanket, so to speak,
Right.
And share that. But once I really got more insight behind how the organization truly works, because of how close I was with working with the elders and going on these so-called shepherding calls and just seeing that these are just dudes. Yeah. That's it. These are dudes. Most of them are drunk off the power.
Yeah.
But this is clearly not the same thing that helped create the planet, which we were told, Holy Spirit is definitely not selecting these fools that I'm working with closely. I can see it. It's in my face. There's just no way.
And these guys,
no way.
9 times out of 10 are not qualified to counsel anybody.
For me, there's two
having to do with their life.
Aspects of that religion that need to stop in order for me to be okay with it continuing. And it's the one that Rob just mentioned, but it's also the shunning. The shunning is so damaging. So damaging.
Yep.
It sent me on such a self-destructive trip through my 20s because if my mom doesn't love me, if my mom doesn't think I'm worthy of her love, then I'm worth nothing and nobody cares. And I was so self-destructive. It's disgusting what shunning does to I was still a child. To be so cut off, and she made it so hard for the members of her side of the family who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. My grandparents were not, she would tell them, I don't know, I don't have her address, I don't have her phone number, and it was a blatant lie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so she made sure that even the people who were not witnesses had no relationship with you.
Yeah. Cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Yeah. That I have a problem with. It is. It's so destructive. So destructive.
I can remember when I realized, oh my gosh, here it is. I'm free of the cult, and I can really get on the dating scene in this beautiful big city here, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And it dawned on me one day that when I'm getting to know someone and they understand that, hold on, your parents and family and friends, lifelong friends, are alive, but none of them talk to you. Who is this weirdo eating dinner with me? I can remember thinking that to myself, I would be very suspicious of a woman who, hold on, everyone's alive, but no one talks to you?
Well, so here's how this stuff affects families even after the fact. And my children are in their late 20s. My children shun me. I have not had a conversation with my daughters in 7 years, and none of us have ever dealt with Jehovah's Witnesses the whole time that my kids grew up. But my kids grew up hearing how my parents don't talk to me, how my mom and my sisters don't talk to me because they're Jehovah's Witnesses and they shun me. And so when my life took a bit of a turn and I separated from my ex, then it was like, well, we don't agree with mom, so how does everybody treat mom? They shun her. And so my children shun me also.
Oh,
and that's how destructive shunning is. That's how destructive it is. Absolutely. That's how children learn. They don't learn by us talking and preaching at them and all this other stuff. Right. They learn because they watch. And they watch how adults interact, and that's what they learn. They learn that dysfunction, that subversive dysfunction. Absolutely.
So to kind of corral back over towards the subject of today, how did you wind up when you were fully gone? How long did it take for you to regroup and get your life on track as far as career-minded?
Are you asking both of us?
Or not? I'm asking you this.
How long did it? I would say it took me a full-on 20 years just to start to feel brave enough to do the research.
Which research are you talking about?
Well, so part of Noel, I started with the alcoholism because I had received a letter that your stepfather's an alcoholic, he's going through AA, and I was like, okay, well that explains why my family was so dysfunctional. So I joined at the beginning of the internet days when there was ICQ chats. I joined an Al-Anon group, and I did a lot of work through Al-Anon and was attacking my dysfunction from that perspective. And I worked through a lot of that stuff, and there was still something missing. There was still something wrong with me. And so then it was like, well, the only other thing in my life is this religion. And so I started doing the religion where, and for me, the stuff that really shook me was, they used to be part of the Seventh-day Adventists. And then I read Crisis of Conscience, and then I started connecting with other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's when, but it took me a good 20 years to even be brave enough to even start to look at anything. And of course there was no internet then.
But it's
really.
But I mean, as far as employment and a career, you never really had really had to bounce back like most witnesses do.
I mean, I've always had really, I did a career career stuff, but I never fit in at a 9-to-5. Because there's always something. My language is different. My thought processing is different. Jehovah's Witnesses who are born into that organization, and I would dare say Scientology and any other abusive religious group that children are born into, our brains don't function like everybody else's. And so when you show up at work, but it's not just that, you don't fit in. You're weird. There's something, people can't put their finger on it, but there's something about you, and it just wasn't an environment that I fit. And
Robert, you were just telling me the other day about a coworker in a conversation about about Donald Trump, and she made a point to mention the fact that Rob, are you there?
I am. I'm listening, okay. And I'm really trying to remember it because I know we speak.
Yes.
You go continue. Let me see if I can remember this. Go ahead.
She made a point to mention that she was a Jehovah's Witness and that it didn't matter, politics didn't matter to her or something like that.
Oh yeah. It was one of the people where I work, where my contract is an active witness, and we were. I think I talked to so many people about this cult, dude. You have to forgive me when the story starts. I'm always trying to expose these people. So if this the story where they were just basically showing just like a blatant disregard for just anything outside of the Kingdom Hall, with just saying that, well, I'm never concerned with politics or anything that's being said and how it's affecting people, just because that's just not the end all be all. Is that what you're referencing, bro?
Yeah, I think you didn't know she was a witness at the time, and the conversation was not relevant to religion.
That was the context.
And she worked it into the conversation.
Yeah, it was how she had worked it in, where I started to hear that culty-ish thinking, and everything was so programmed with it. Yes, that's.
Well, now that she's mentioned
I remember being that way.
She mentioned she's a witness, so she can count the time on her report at the end of the month.
Of course.
That's right.
Of course.
Those 15 minutes is an hour on her field service report.
The funniest thing, the craziest thing here that I used the fact that she is unaware, that I once was a part of that cult. It kind of helps me remember what my former friends, their mindset is. Because when I say certain things to her that I would love to tell them, I know her answer is going to be their answer. And so I've been just kind of, testing things. And one of the things that I just kind of shared with her was how if we were at a restaurant and they are telling you about the special of the day and they just happen to casually mention among many of the ingredients that there's human feces in it, but they just keep telling you then about the encrusted pecans and whatever, but you did hear them clearly say that ingredient number 4 was human feces. You don't care about the rest of the dish. The rest of it can be, gold and lobster on it, but you mentioned the human feces. And so that's how I feel when I learned about, how you guys have this 2-witness rule, the stuff that came out in Australia. And her response was just simply, well, I think sometimes people really are doing things their own way, that's just not the way that it's coming down from New York. And I said, well, you may want to ask your dad. You said your dad's an elder. Ask him if a sex offender moved into your congregation, would the congregation be made aware? And she basically avoided me for like the next 8-9 days at the job, and it's a very small place.
That's the frustration, though,
place.
is that they won't. It's like, let's just discuss this. And as soon as they get to that block that they don't have a pre-scripted answer for, they shut down. Right.
Whoops.
Right.
That's not in the reasoning book.
And then there's no more discussion. And it's like, Jesus, use your brain. Like, think about this stuff.
Use it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. They're taught to not use their brain.
Information.
They're independent thinking. Right.
And that's the really tricky thing about mind control and brainwashing, is that it has all these fail safes. So, it's like those flow charts. You ask the question and then there's a yes, no, and depending, then you flow to the next level and stuff. And it's, and with brainwashing, it's like, okay, so, this has been put to me. Do I have an answer for it? No. And it circles back up to the beginning. And I guarantee you that you're going to have that conversation or one very similar to that with her again.
You think so?
And and there's all these like little landmines and stuff. So you get to a certain point and then their brain implodes because they've gone too far. And it's the brainwashing is on so many levels deep too. You just can't win. In my opinion.
I get the feeling that she'll avoid that conversation at all costs.
But that's a really good example. Like, that's an amazing example.
And she may be suspicious of you by now, too. Because the average person doesn't have those kind of questions and concerns.
Here's what I've learned in all the years I've been out, though. You never know what is that one thing that is going to cause them to wake up. And to me, that makes it all worth it. So that it may not hit her today, but 5 years down the road, somebody may say something and that may come up, and that might be the one thing that she says, I've had enough.
That's an interesting game of chess that you get to play with this person, though.
Yeah, it is because I love to not waste people's time. The older I get, the more precious my time becomes, and I always want to quickly be able to hit someone with a really quick point to get them to think like you're saying, so that maybe on their way home they're sitting thinking that, hey, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
What he just said. I told my mom the last time we vocally spoke, because due to my daughter's birth, I have allowed my mom to get updates on her granddaughter, and so it was under that context that we were speaking. And with tears, unapologetic tears, and she was crying too, I told my mom, I said, I really do believe that if my father was still alive and he knew that our relationship would have changed based upon us simply changing our mind about being in this religion, if he knew that, he would have prevented you from joining that religion. And I do believe that with all my heart. In fact, Mama, I believe that if you knew when you were joining this, having just lost your father, just her mom died 7 months before before her husband was murdered, leaving her with 2 kids. God. So you think of the fragility of where she is. And so I said, Mama, I understand, but because I know them, I know you were not aware of these repercussions that were 25 years into the future of that moment. But I want you to know, I feel that if you knew that if your sons ever left, you couldn't have a regular relationship, Mama, I don't think you would have done it. And she told me, you're right.
Wow.
Did she realize what she admitted to you?
I don't think so because she's she's crying and said it. She said it, and I didn't say anything back because it was such an emotional thing where I know I'm no longer wondering how she could have gotten into it. Everyone's tricked. They caught her when she's vulnerable.
Yes.
They don't highlight those things. I taught it. I helped so many people unfortunately get baptized. I know how they teach it and suck people in. So I wanted her to know I don't hold that against her.
Right.
But at the same time, it's important that she acknowledges that is a practice of the religion.
Wow.
So, did you just say that you're responsible for having brought a few people in?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Oh, man. See, I brought my cousin in, and I wound up having to apologize to him and letting him know that, I got you involved in something that is not very far from what they claim to be, and he won't even let me talk about it. He's still, I got his mind wrapped up in the cult, and he believes them, and I feel so horrible about that.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you talked to the people? Any of the people?
Only one person that I brought all the way to baptism has left. The others are still in it, and I left a marriage and the cult at the same time, and my ex-wife, she had not been in the organization for, it was right at 10 years she was in the organization. Now, this was a college-educated, successful woman. When I met her the first time I had left the cult, I was only out for a few months. But when I returned with her. And to see how quickly in 10 years, she was completely indoctrinated, so much so that when I shared with her how my thinking was changing, of course she ran and immediately told the elders.
Right. It destroyed your marriage. Yeah. The elders destroyed your marriage.
She went and told them right away.
So she's still in right now.
Yeah. She's actually my mom told me that she was disfellowshipped and had come back. And the weirdest thing to me is, see, I'm the one that's from New Orleans. She is here where all her family is, and to think of a person who doesn't have a lifetime inside of it, who had lived as an adult outside of the cult, would leave it. They have all their family and friends here and then go back to it. That was kind of disappointing when I heard that she apparently returned. But I'm sorry I turned her onto it. I really do feel that way too. But hopefully she and I one day could have that conversation, because I was brainwashed. It's just that simple.
Well, you almost have to have the conversation regardless of whether or not that person's sitting with you in order for you to move towards self-forgiveness.
Now, could you add to that a little bit? Go into detail with that, please.
So, one of the things that I do, that I work with clients with, is the most important step in anything is forgiving yourself and being responsible, taking accountability, and then forgiving yourself because you didn't know any better and you were doing what you thought was right at the time. And some of the things that you can do is to write the letter. You don't have to send it. You can imagine having the conversation, whether or not the person is involved, because the reality of it is forgiveness is about you. It's never about that other person anyway. So it doesn't matter if you actually have that conversation with her in order for you to forgive yourself for bringing her in.
Gotcha. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is, and the interesting thing is one of the episodes on the Scientology thing, Leo talks about that as well. Because a lot of those people, Mike Rinder and all of these guys, brought people in, and now they have this huge guilt because it's ruined these people's lives. And so her thing is that, but you were a victim also. Yeah. You were brainwashed also. And so it's not your fault. And so you have to find forgiveness there.
When I talked to my cousin about everything that's so false about it, and he was just so strong in what he believed, and I'm like, well, what makes you still believe this after everything that I told you? And his answer was, "You serious, man? It's common sense." What?
Oh my gosh.
Common sense.
Apparently
that's your answer?
They've changed the common sense.
Right.
There can be anything.
What I have found. Go ahead,
I was just going to say, there couldn't be anything more opposite of common sense to stay in knowing what you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And for me,
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid in
Right.
Jonestown because of common sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I recently talked to a friend of mine whom him and his wife were really good friends with my ex-wife and myself when we were in, and it was really an amazing conversation, because what he said to me was, I don't know where you are today when it comes to Jehovah, and he's like, don't tell me. And he just reminisced and had this great conversation with me, and just left it at, I don't want to know. And he said, I don't know what it's going to take, for us to resume our friendship the way that it used to be. He says, I will keep up with you periodically, but he's like, I don't know what it's going to take for us to get back there. And I said, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I said, but we will resume one day, and I will just leave it at that. And what I meant by that was, because he's an intelligent dude, so is his wife. They're gonna wake the fuck up one day.
but here's the thing: this stuff has nothing to do with intelligence. That's the
I
sad
know.
part. That's what makes it so
know.
hard to resolve, is because none of this is about intelligence. All of this is about catching people when they're vulnerable, and taking advantage of that, and then turning them into zombies.
Having the perfect bullshit for whatever they're going through.
Absolutely. My sister,
Goodness.
both of my sisters about 10, 12 years ago, asked to reconnect with me and actually flew me out to spend a week with them, which is and they actually had to lie to their Jehovah's Witness friends because they're not allowed to associate with me. And so if anybody had
was the
found
lie?
out, then they would be at risk of being disfellowshipped also. But they did it anyway. And
Who did they say you were?
oh, I wasn't taken around anywhere. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm the
okay.
big secret,
Wow.
But there was at a point at the end of the trip where my sister said, can't you just come back and get reinstated so that we can have a relationship?
No, can you leave the cult?
And I said to her, but you're asking me to live my life as a lie. I know things that I can't unknow about this organization, and I can't live my life as a lie.
Right.
And unfortunately, that means if you choose to stay, that this is just going to be the terms of our relationship.
Wow. Does she refuse to?
She does.
To
My youngest
research her
sister
cult?
not so much, but yeah, my middle sister does not communicate with me at all.
But I mean, the sister that communicated with you, does she refuse to look at information?
Oh, I didn't even go there. And you know what? To me, it's like, if they want it, they'll ask me, and I will be more than happy to send it, but I'm not going to offer it up. It has to
Right.
be because they're dissatisfied, because they're, something happens that jolts them, at which point then I will, because you can't really, if they're all in, you can't really offer anything anyway. They have an answer for it, or they shut down, and that's the end of it. So what's the point? Again, I'm not going to waste my time on that stuff.
Right. I just try to encourage people to do themselves a service and research anything that they're devoting their lives
and the
to.
one husband was like, well, tell me all this stuff. And I was like, you need to do your own research, because what triggered me and woke me up isn't necessarily going to be the thing that gets him. And that's what makes leaving so
true.
tricky, is because if you talk to 20 ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they all have a different thing that woke them up.
That's so true.
And so just because that woke me up doesn't mean if I show him that stuff, he's going to be like, well, I knew that already and it doesn't bother me. There are people who are so brainwashed, knowing that there potentially could be sex offenders in their congregation doesn't affect them because they don't have children, or for whatever reason. It just, for whatever reason, isn't their trigger, isn't going to be their thing. As appalling as that is.
It's very, very scary. It is, because as I got more responsibility, I was in a congregation that had elders who were much older than the average congregation in this part of the country. These guys, we had like multiple elders who were in their late 70s, whereas around us we had a lot of congregations where elders were in their early 40s even, were younger guys. And so I was, because of that age difference, I was given a lot of responsibilities that the average servant wouldn't. For instance, I coordinated all of the Sunday meetings, getting the public speakers, also assigning who would leave, going out to give public talks. And so I was over, I would even do during the midweek, the congregation Bible study. I would conduct that. I told you there was a group meeting at my home. So
wait, so were you an elder?
No, I was just a servant with a ton of responsibilities.
What?
Basically.
So they didn't want to.
It was.
Somebody didn't want to hook you up.
I had said no. I had said no when it was offered to me the first time because I was very, very uncomfortable with a lot of the things that I was seeing just from the elders. I told you that they made it clear to me that Holy Spirit played no part in elders being selected. So what I started to identify was, you have people who are able to realize there is no other place. Now, this is from a man's perspective. A lot of these elders, there is no other place in society where they would get the respect that they're getting right now. I have people actually have to listen to me. I have people giving me dinners and lunches just because I, came by to see them for a second. But I'm a janitor. I'm, I wash windows all day, but I have 200 people who tremble at my word.
Absolutely.
I'm addicted to this shit. Absolutely. Yeah, I did find out that the policy says that we don't need to do this or do that. That's messed up, but people listen to just Janitor Bob here when I come through these doors.
Janitor Bob.
So you have people addicted to power. Go ahead, please.
If you were one of those witnesses that led a double life, could you have used that to your advantage to hook up with women? Do you think?
To hook up with women, probably because a lot of the witness women obviously would do the same thing. Like they would get a conscience. Like I could have exploited it during shepherding calls or something and came back later, but I know that I could be the most talented stroke machine in the world, but she'll read her Kingdom Ministry the next day and go tell somebody.
That's an interesting use of words, my friend. Oh my god. Nice.
It didn't ever cross your mind when you realized?
Come on now, he's a man. Of course he did.
Of course. There was so much, repressed tension. Just in everybody's, let alone just in their own marriages, but of course it would extend to those who were completely healthy females but just didn't like her options, and so she is just horny as hell or something. These people often would make sure when I'm holding the mic that the top is unbuttoned all the way down, or I would get the call where, hey, could you really quickly come over here? I thought there was some noise in the backyard because I live around the corner from this person, and so okay, I'll go real quick. I'll go directly to her instead of waiting for an elder first, and it's coming to the door and something that's see-through, but still trying to go through the motions the problem
you had a
is
much
just
more
right
fun
over
congregation.
here, hoping that I would initiative. Well, it was.
You know what?
Wow,
I
really?
hear this all the time, Angela. When I talk to people,
I'm so sheltered.
I mean, I'm hearing my congregation was the same thing. I didn't see anything. I didn't know I've talked to people who were having secret parties and being drunk and fooling around. I've never seen or heard any of that stuff when I was in. I was definitely at the wrong congregation.
No kidding, eh?
Definitely. Just all the fun.
So I really, it was because of that extra responsibility. I think had I not gotten that responsibility, guys, I never would have left. I think because I needed to see the warts. I needed to see it, and then the other things that transpired with the guy with the sex offender, and then I told you I also had a friend who refused the transfusion and died because of it. Those things all happened, literally within a 3-month period, and so it was the extra responsibility, seeing it for what it was, the sex offender being exposed, and then a dear friend of mine giving birth to a kid and not being able to even leave the hospital ever to go back home because she said no to a transfusion and died.
You had way too much proof, didn't you?
Yeah, I need no further proof. And I shared, the final, that was 1, 2, 3 things. The fourth nail to that coffin was the August Watchtower from 2013 that conveniently changed the understanding of the 1914 doctrine. When we covered that, I remember telling my wife at home, I can still remember, we were sitting at the table and we were studying it, she and I, and I just told her out loud. I said, next year this would be 100 years ago. It's kind of convenient that it changes because I would need to know what makes them convinced now that it's different, but last week it was something else. I said that out loud to her. A day later, elders are just popping up at my house under the guise of just seeing what's going on, man. As we come in. Yeah, so those things got me out. I couldn't ignore that any longer. But I do want just to make sure I verbally said on here that I believe that many people stay in it, especially the men, because they are very aware that there is no place else they can go and be treated the way that they are as an elder in a cult.
Thank you, Robert, so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And having this discussion. And definitely we need to get you back on to talk some more, get back more onto the subject that we initially came to talk about, but the stuff that you shared, some good pieces of logic that you had in there that could be very
I thoroughly enjoyed it, man.
Maybe thinking about leaving.
You can have me on any time, dude.
There she is.
I really look forward to doing it some more, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Keep it going, man.
And thank you also, Angela. I was just wrapping it up anyways.
Okay.
So we're in perfect shape here. How do people get in touch with you guys again, Robert? What is your Twitter handle? Somebody find you on Twitter.
Gosh, hold on. I should have had this prep for you already. I'm sorry about that. I really should have. I didn't even think about that because I feel like I'm not even the person that has it, but I really do. So I should have that information.
You're just now starting to get active on it. I've noticed anyways.
That's what it is, yeah.
Angela, how do we find you?
Twitter at Angela Ola, all one word. And all my accounts are pretty much just my first name, last name. So.
How would you spell?
Olah. Sorry.
Okay. So it's not hello in Spanish.
No. When I go to Cuba, I'm very popular.
Oh, that's a different podcast. I want to hear those stories.
Right.
Not that way, Rob.
I thought it was,
as far as you know, right?
The Toronto Swirl or some new thing we were going to hear about.
Toronto Swirl.
Oh my God, you've been here.
Oh my goodness. She is so red right now. I can feel it over here.
It's a hot flash.
Gotcha.
Walk along.
Two different things, huh?
I am on Twitter. I have found it, and it's at rmccoy1030. So just RMCCOY, the number 1030. So I look forward to anyone who wants to talk. Reach out, please. Let's talk.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
I love talking. Are you kidding me?
You guys are both some interesting and fun people to talk to. We got to do this again with the two of you guys.
For sure.
And or separately or whatever. We have plenty of other times that you guys are always.
Angela, it was an honor meeting someone who is exhibiting a lot of strength despite what you've gone through, and I wish you nothing but continued success, and I thank you for all the things you shared with me today. I really appreciate it.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And that's really just, part of why I want to do all that is because I want people who are on the fringe, who have just come out or whatever, to understand that there is an amazing life to be had. You can fix it, put all the pieces back together, and create something absolutely amazing. So I
jump
appreciate
out while
that.
you can, while you still have some life to live still, so that you don't die as an old person and realize you've wasted your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It was awesome meeting you guys as well. It's always
likewise.
It's there's so many people who are still in a state of dysfunction. It's hard sometimes, and it's really refreshing to meet people who kind of put it all together, who are making it happen at a different level. I don't know if that makes sense. And it's not a judgment on those who are still struggling, right. That's for sure. But it's really refreshing and amazing to talk to other people who don't mind dropping F-bombs.
It's funny that, Robert, the conversation that I had with her about that, a lot of podcasts, although they're full of great useful information, sometimes they feel like almost the same, that same drudgery of listening to a talk.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then you find yourself forcing yourself to keep sitting there listening for that information, but it's tedious. Well, all right, everybody, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
We will see you guys again on episode 21. Have a good one.